recent months, we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president to stop the American people from getting the policies that they voted for in record numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy, frankly, and instead of merely ruling on the immediate cases before them, these judges have attempted to dictate the law for the entire nation. Some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case, because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves.
Okay, so Donald Trump just got accused of violating the 14th Amendment again, but this time it's different, like way different. We're not talking about January 6th anymore. We're talking about something that's happening right now in real time. And honestly, most people have no idea what's actually going on. So here's what happened. Last week, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, yeah, that's a real court, a big one. They came out swinging. They dropped this ruling that basically said Trump's administration violated foundational due process. Those are their words, not mine. Foundational due process. That's like the most basic constitutional protection Americans have, and they're saying Trump just threw it in the trash. Now Chuck Schumer, Senate Majority Leader, Democrat from New York, he's out here on October 19th telling reporters, and I quote, "What we're seeing is not law enforcement, it's state-sanctioned persecution. State-sanctioned persecution." Those are strong words, right? Like, that's not normal political back and forth. That's Schumer basically saying the president is acting like a dictator. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video. And then Mitt Romney chimes in. Mitt Romney, the most moderate Republican in the Senate, the guy who voted to convict Trump twice during impeachment. Romney comes out on October 20th and says this administration is walking a dangerous constitutional line when Mitt Romney is worried. Come on, that should tell you something. But here's where it gets wild. The court case that started all this, it wasn't about some random policy. Trump's government has been detaining people, alleged gang members, they call them, but these people are being labeled as insurrection sympathizers. Yeah, insurrection sympathizers. And they're being detained and deported without trials, without lawyers, without any of the stuff the Constitution says you're supposed to get. Now conservatives are firing back. The Federalist, that big conservative outlet, they're calling this whole thing democratic overreach. They're saying Trump's just enforcing immigration law, doing his job, protecting national security, standard stuff, right? Except it's not standard when a federal appeals court says you violated foundational due process. That's not normal. So why does this matter? Because this is the first time Trump is facing a 14th Amendment-based impeachment threat while he's actually sitting in the Oval Office, not after January 6th, not during some investigation. Right now, today, there's literally a resolution in Congress, SA.Res 415. You can look it up, calling for his impeachment based on this exact issue. And like, this isn't just Democrats being mad. The Fourth Circuit Court isn't a partisan body. These are federal judges, lifetime appointments, saying the government broke the law. That's a big deal. That's not just politics. That's the judicial branch checking the executive branch, which is literally how the Constitution is supposed to work. But here's what nobody's talking about. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, the part Schumer mentioned, that's the insurrection clause. It says anyone who engages in insurrection or gives aid or comfort to enemies of the Constitution can't hold office. And Trump's team, they're out here detaining people for being insurrection sympathizers, while Trump himself is being accused of violating that same amendment. The irony is, can you believe this? And the timing? October 2025. We're almost a year into Trump's second term. His birthright citizenship executive order is already at the Supreme Court. His deportation policies are facing challenges in multiple states. And now this, federal court saying he's violating due process. Senators from both parties raising alarms. An impeachment resolution sitting in the House. This is one of those moments where you have to step back and ask, what exactly is happening here? Because the story the media is covering, Senate leaders mad at Trump, political theater, same old, same old. That's not the real story. The real story is way bigger, way messier, and honestly, way scarier. Think about it for a second. We've got a sitting president whose own government is being told by federal courts that they're breaking the Constitution, not bending it, not pushing the limits, breaking it. And the response from his team? Double down, keep going, ignore the courts. That's not how this is supposed to work. And what's even crazier is how divided everyone is on this. Half the country thinks Trump's finally getting tough on immigration and doing what needs to be done. The other half thinks he's turning into an authoritarian. There's no middle ground anymore, no space for nuance. You're either with him or against him. But the courts don't care about any of that. They just look at the law. And right now the law is saying Trump crossed the line. So stick with me, because over the next 20 minutes, we're going to break down what the 14th Amendment actually says, why this court ruling matters so much, what Trump's team is really doing with these deportations, and why this could completely reshape how much power a president actually has. And trust me, by the end of this, you're going to see this whole situation completely differently. Let's get into it. All right, so before we go any further, we got to talk about what the 14th Amendment actually is, because I guarantee most people hear 14th Amendment and their eyes glaze over. Constitutional law sounds boring, right? Except it's not boring when it's being used to go after a sitting president. Then it gets real interesting, real fast. The 14th Amendment was passed after the Civil War, 1868. It was designed to do a few things: give citizenship to formerly enslaved people, guarantee equal protection under the law, and this is the part everyone forgets: prevent Confederates from holding federal office. Yeah, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is literally an insurrection clause. It says if you engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or if you gave aid or comfort to its enemies, you can't be a senator, representative, or hold any civil or military office. Now here's where it gets messy. That clause was used exactly once in modern history. After January 6th, some legal scholars argued Trump violated Section 3 by inciting the Capitol riot. Colorado actually tried to remove him from the ballot. The Supreme Court shut that down, said states can't enforce Section 3 on their own. It has to be Congress. But the question never really went away. Did Trump engage in insurrection? And if he did, can he hold office? Fast forward to now, October 2025. Trump's in his second term, and suddenly the 14th Amendment is back. But this time, it's not about January 6th. It's about what his administration is doing right now. And that's where this gets really weird. So the Fourth Circuit court case, let's talk about what actually happened. Trump's administration has been using federal agencies, ICE, DHS, you know, the alphabet soup, to detain people they're calling gang members tied to political unrest. Okay, gang members. That sounds bad, right? Nobody likes gang members. But here's the thing. These aren't just random gang members. They're being labeled as insurrection sympathizers. Insurrection sympathizers. Think about that phrase for a second. What does that even mean? Like, if you sympathize with insurrection, does that make you an insurrectionist? Can the government just label you a threat and detain you without a trial? Because that's what's happening. These people are being rounded up, detained, and in some cases deported without due process. No lawyer, no trial, no chance to defend themselves. And the Fourth Circuit Court said that's unconstitutional. They didn't just say it's questionable or concerning. They said it violated foundational due process. That's about as harsh as a court can get without literally holding someone in contempt. Now, Trump's team, they're arguing this is all about immigration enforcement. They're saying these are dangerous criminals, gang members, people who threaten national security. And yeah, maybe some of them are, but the court doesn't care about that. The court cares about process. And the process here, non-existent. Here's the thing most people don't understand. Due process isn't just some legal technicality. It's the idea that the government can't just lock you up because they feel like it. You get a trial. You get to see the evidence. You get a lawyer. That's what separates us from authoritarian regimes. And when a federal court says the government violated foundational due process, that's the court saying the government is acting like an authoritarian regime. So Chuck Schumer comes out and says this is state-sanctioned persecution. And honestly, based on what the court said, he's not wrong. Now, you can argue about whether Trump knew this was happening, whether he personally ordered it, all that stuff, but the court ruling doesn't care about intent. It cares about what actually happened. And what happened is people got detained without due process. Mitt Romney's quote is interesting too. He says the administration is walking a dangerous constitutional line, not crossing it, walking it. That's Romney being careful. He's a Republican. He doesn't want to fully turn on Trump, but he's also a guy who actually cares about the Constitution, and he's clearly uncomfortable with what's going on. And then you've got The Federalist and other conservative outlets saying this is all fake news, Democratic overreach, nothing to see here. They're framing it as Trump just doing his job, enforcing immigration law, protecting Americans. Standard conservative talking points. Except, again, a federal appeals court said the government broke the law. So either the court is lying, which seems unlikely, or conservatives are spinning this to protect Trump. Now let's talk about why this matters beyond just this one case. Because this isn't happening in a vacuum. Trump's second term has been, let's say, aggressive on immigration. He signed an executive order trying to end birthright citizenship. That's the idea that if you're born in the U.S., you're automatically a citizen. It's been the law for over 150 years. Trump wants to change it with an executive order. The Supreme Court is currently deciding whether he can even do that. He's also ramped up deportations to levels we haven't seen in decades. ICE raids, workplace raids, family separations. It's like his first term on steroids. And now we're finding out that in the process of all this, his administration has been detaining people without due process. So when Schumer invokes Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, the insurrection clause, he's making a specific argument. He's saying Trump is using his power to persecute political opponents or people he doesn't like, and that's a form of giving aid and comfort to insurrection. It's a stretch legally, but politically, it's a smart move because it ties Trump's current actions to the January 6th stuff, which still posed terribly for him. And here's where the impeachment push comes in. Hus.res.415. That's the resolution in the House calling for Trump's impeachment based on these 14th Amendment violations. Now, realistically, is this going anywhere? Probably not. Republicans control the House. They're not going to impeach Trump. But the fact that it exists, that Democrats are pushing it, that senators from both parties are talking about constitutional violations, that matters because it sets up a narrative. Trump as someone who abuses power. Trump as someone who doesn't respect the Constitution. Trump as someone who thinks he's above the law. Whether that's true or not, whether you believe it or not, that narrative is powerful. And it's exactly what Democrats need heading into 2026 midterms. But let's be real. Trump's base doesn't care about any of this. They see this as more political attacks, more witch hunts, more Democrats trying to take down their guy. And honestly, they're not totally wrong. This is political. Of course, it's political. Everything in Washington is political. But that doesn't mean the underlying legal issues aren't real. So where does that leave us? We've got a court saying the government violated the Constitution. We've got senators from both parties expressing concern. We've got an impeachment resolution. We've got conservatives saying it's all fake. And we've got Trump just doing his thing, not backing down, not apologizing, doubling down on his immigration policies. And that's what makes this story so wild, because this isn't going to just go away. The legal challenges are going to keep coming. The political pressure is going to keep building. And at some point, something's got to give. Now, here's something else worth mentioning. The October 18th ruling from the Fourth Circuit. That date matters. We're talking about a ruling that just dropped days ago. This isn't old news. This is current, active, developing. And the fact that it happened so close to the 2026 midterms, yeah, that's not a coincidence. Democrats are going to use this. They're already using it. And think about what this means for Trump's agenda going forward. Every time he tries to push through an immigration policy, every time he signs an executive order, every time his administration does anything remotely controversial, it's going to end up in court. And now the courts have this precedent, this ruling saying his administration violated foundational due process. That's going to be cited in every single case. Trump's legal team knows this. That's why they're fighting so hard to get this overturned. That's why conservative media is working overtime to downplay it. Because if this ruling stands, it undermines everything Trump's trying to do on immigration. It puts a check on his power, and Trump hates checks on his power. Okay, so let's break this down into the actual points that matter, because there's a lot of noise around this story, and we got to cut through it. Point 1, the Fourth Circuit Court ruling is a big deal, like really big. Federal appeals courts don't just throw around phrases like violated foundational due process for fun. That's a serious rebuke. It means the court looked at what Trump's administration did and said, nope, that's unconstitutional. And here's the thing, courts don't care about politics. They care about law. So when a court says you broke the law, you broke the law. Now Trump's team is appealing. Obviously, they're going to fight this. But the ruling stands for now, and it's going to be cited in every other case challenging Trump's immigration policies. It's precedent. It's ammunition for anyone trying to push back against what Trump's doing. And look, court rulings can be overturned. That happens. But the process takes time. Months, sometimes years. And in the meantime, this ruling exists. It's out there. And every judge hearing cases about Trump's immigration enforcement is going to see it and think, the Fourth Circuit said this violated due process. Maybe I should look at this more carefully. Point 2. This is about way more than just this one case. This is about executive power. How much power does a president have? Can a president order federal agencies to detain people without trials? Can a president ignore due process in the name of national security? These are huge questions, and the answer, according to the Fourth Circuit, is no, you can't. But Trump's argument, and this is important, is that immigration enforcement is different, that non-citizens don't have the same constitutional protections as citizens. And legally, he's kind of right. Non-citizens don't have all the same rights. But, and this is a big but, they still have some rights. Due process is one of them. You can't just lock someone up indefinitely without giving them a chance to defend themselves. That's still unconstitutional even for non-citizens. So the legal battle here is going to be about where that line is, how much process is due, what counts as a fair hearing. Can you fast-track deportations in the name of efficiency? These questions are going to end up at the Supreme Court, guaranteed. And given the current makeup of the court, 6-3 conservative, it's hard to say which way they'll rule. The Supreme Court has been pretty friendly to Trump on executive power issues. They've generally given presidents a lot of leeway, especially on immigration and national security. But even this Supreme Court has limits. They've ruled against Trump before. They might do it again, or they might side with him and say, yeah, immigration enforcement is different. The president has broad authority here. Either way, this is going to be a defining case for presidential power. Whatever the Supreme Court decides is going to set the precedent for decades. Future presidents are going to cite this case. Legal scholars are going to write about it. This is big. Point 3. The political implications are massive. Chuck Schumer invoking the 14th Amendment, calling this state-sanctioned persecution, that's not just rhetoric. That's a political strategy. Democrats are trying to paint Trump as a threat to democracy, as someone who abuses power, as someone who doesn't respect the Constitution. And stories like this, court rulings saying he violated due process, they fit perfectly into that narrative. Republicans are pushing back hard. They're saying this is just Trump enforcing the law, protecting Americans, doing what voters elected him to do, and their base believes that. But independents, swing voters, they might see this differently. When you've got Mitt Romney, a Republican, saying the administration is walking a dangerous constitutional line, that gives cover to independents who are uncomfortable with Trump but don't want to be seen as partisan in the impeachment resolution. .res.415, comma, yeah, it's not going to pass. But it keeps the issue alive. It keeps Trump on defense. It gives Democrats something to campaign on in 2026, and it sets up the possibility of actual impeachment if Democrats take back the House in the midterms. Think about the messaging here. Democrats can go to voters and say, look, a federal court said Trump violated the Constitution. A Republican senator said he's walking a dangerous line. We tried to impeach him for it, but Republicans protected him. Do you want to give us the majority so we can hold him accountable? That's a powerful message. And for Republicans, defending Trump is tricky because they can't just say the court is wrong. Courts have credibility, so they have to argue that the court misunderstood the law, or that the situation is more complicated than it seems, or that this is really about immigration enforcement, not constitutional violations. That's a harder sell. Point 4, the bigger picture. This isn't just about immigration or the 14th Amendment or impeachment. This is about what kind of country we are. Do we believe in due process? Do we believe in checks and balances? Do we believe in the rule of law? Or do we believe that presidents can do whatever they want in the name of national security? And look, I get it. Immigration is a tough issue. Lots of people think the system is broken. Lots of people want stricter enforcement. That's a legitimate political debate. But there's a difference between strict enforcement and unconstitutional enforcement. And according to the Fourth Circuit, Trump crossed that line. Now, maybe you think the court is wrong. Maybe you think Trump's doing what needs to be done. That's fine. But you can't ignore the fact that a federal appeals court said he violated the Constitution. That's not nothing. That's a big deal. And here's what worries some people. If Trump can detain people without due process in the name of immigration enforcement, what else can he do? Can he ignore other constitutional protections? Can he expand this to other areas? Slippery slope arguments aren't always valid, but in this case, there's something to it. Once you start saying due process doesn't apply in certain situations, where does it end? That's the question civil liberties groups are asking. That's the question some Republicans like Romney are asking. And that's the question voters are going to have to answer in 2026 and beyond. So what happens next? Well, the legal challenges continue. Trump's team is appealing the Fourth Circuit ruling. That appeal is going to work its way through the courts. Could take months. The Supreme Court is going to have to weigh in on birthright citizenship, probably by summer 2026. They might also have to weigh in on this due process issue. Congress is going to keep fighting over impeachment, investigations, all that stuff. And Trump, he's going to keep doing what he's doing because that's what he does. But here's the thing. Every time a court rules against him, every time a senator from his own party expresses concern, every time a new scandal or controversy pops up, it chips away at his support. Not with his base is ride or die, but with everyone else. With the people who kind of liked him, but are getting tired of the chaos. With the people who voted for him, but are starting to wonder if this is what they signed up for. And that's what Democrats are betting on. That eventually the accumulation of all this stuff, the court rulings, the constitutional violations, the political drama, will turn enough people against Trump that they can take back power. Will it work? I don't know. Trump's been counted out before, and he always comes back. But this time feels different, because this isn't just about tweets or mean comments or whatever. This is about the courts saying he violated the Constitution. That's harder to spin, harder to ignore. So yeah, Trump accused of 14th Amendment abuse, federal court saying he violated due process, senators from both parties raising alarms, impeachment resolution in Congress. This is a big story, and it's only going to get bigger because at the end of the day, this is about power. Who has it, who doesn't, and what they're willing to do with it. And right now, Trump has a lot of power, but the courts are pushing back. Congress is pushing back, and the question is, who's going to win? We're watching a constitutional crisis play out in real time, and most people don't even realize it. They see headlines about Trump and immigration and think, oh, same old stuff. But it's not. This is different. This is the judiciary saying the executive branch broke the law. That's separation of powers. 101. That's the Constitution working the way it's supposed to. But it's also messy, and it's divisive, and it's not clear how it ends. Does the Supreme Court side with Trump? Does Congress impeach him? Do voters decide they've had enough? Or does Trump weather the storm like he always does? Stick around, because this story is far from over. Next time, we're diving into Trump's birthright citizenship executive order and why the Supreme Court might actually let him end a 150-year-old constitutional right. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it.